Welcome to This Week in Combat Sports, where we're looking ahead of this weekend's big fights and some of the bigger news of the day. I'm Drew Goldfarb, joined by Rick Rockwell. Rick, this week we're focused entirely on MMA and entirely on UFC 239. Two championship bouts headlining Saturday's fight card at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. The co-main event, Amanda Nunes takes on Holly Holm in the women's bantamweight division. The champ Nunes is favored to win at minus 350. The challenger Holm posting at plus 275. Can Holm take away one of Nunes' titles here?
She has a shot. She does have a shot. You got to give her a chance because she is a dangerous striker, and she's a well-rounded striker. She can do it with her feet and with her fists. That in itself makes her a potent challenger to Nunes. But I look at it this way with Nunes, and it's the same argument I make with, when I used to make with the Golden State Warriors or the Patriots in the playoffs. Until they're beaten, you pick them to win. Nunes is a beast, okay? She surprised everybody by knocking out Cyborg in her last fight. Nobody thought that was going to happen. But she proved how dangerous of a striker she is, the power she has in her hands. We already knew she was ferocious in the ring. We already knew she was tough. We knew she was gritty. Like, you knew you were going to have a good fight when Nunes gets into the octagon. But what she did to knock out someone who was considered basically invincible was phenomenal for the sport and for women's MMA itself. Now she comes into a fight against a legitimate contender, a legitimate opponent, a legitimate striker. If she's not on her game, she could lose this fight. I believe she'll be on her game. I believe the champ's going to come in there. She's going to take this challenge as the biggest challenge of her career. She's not just fighting opponents right now. She's fighting to be the greatest female fighter in the history of the sport. That's what she says. That's what she wants. That's what we all believe. Well, most of us believe could happen. She puts together a few more wins. There's no argument. Right now, you can say she is, and someone might argue. But if she puts together a few more wins, there's no argument. Like, she is dominant. I'm picking her to win. Until she loses again, I'm going to ride in this train all the way until off the tracks.
Well, in the main event, it is Jon Jones battling Thiago Santos in the light heavyweight division. Santos, a plus 450 underdog. That has even moved today. It was plus 400 yesterday. Jones, a huge minus 650 favorite. Do you see any value on betting on either side of this fight?
No, there's no value. If Santos was going up against anybody else in the division other than Jon Jones, he either would be a favorite or the fight would be a lot closer in the odds. You have Santos, who's a dangerous fighter, but he's going up against an elite fighter who's considered by many to be the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time. I know some people want to argue GSP's up there. I don't think GSP is better than Jon Jones. I think Jon Jones was a far and away better striker than GSP ever was. And I think, in my opinion, Jon Jones is the greatest MMA fighter of all time to this point. He has a shot. I mean, there's nobody in his division that's even close to him right now. That's how much he dominates everybody. He would have to go up to heavyweight, or someone from heavyweight would have to come down, or they would have to have a catchweight fight to have any kind of mega fight right now, because he's blown away everybody. And even if he were to have a trilogy fight against DC, he would be the favorite in that fight. That's how dominant he is. He's a special talent. He's had issues outside of the cage, which, obviously has caused problems for him. But if you just look at what he does inside the octagon, there's nobody who's done it better. You can argue people have done it as well, but nobody's done it better. And in terms of betting, like I just said with Nunes, until Jones loses, and this argument's even more emphatic for Jones, until he loses, which who knows if that's going to ever happen again, you go with Jones to win every single fight. In this fight, it's not even worth taking a flyer on Santos. Even though he's a dangerous fighter, it's not worth it because Jones is still just that much better than his opponents.
This is going to be an incredibly stacked card. Other main card fights including Jorge Masvidal taking on the 19-0 Ben Askren, Diego Sanchez fighting Michael Chiesa, and plenty more. Which fights outside of the main and co-main event bouts jump out to you the most, either from the excitement to just see it happen or preferably from the betting side of things, where it might actually provide you some numbers on one side or another. Askren is betting as the favorite despite being listed second in the bout order.
You know, the funny thing is, well, I shouldn't say funny, but a lot of these fights had large disparity in betting odds. So unless you think an upset's going to happen, there wasn't as much betting value. Like I would say off the top of my head, and there's 12 fights. Off the top of my head, I would say at least 9 of them had clear-cut betting favorites. And not just like small favorites. We're talking noticeable. Minus 175 might have been the lowest. I didn't check the odds yet today, as of yesterday when I checked them. Point is this, though, with so many favorites like that, or with odds makers viewing certain fighters as larger favorites, you might have some potential for upsets or at least taking flyers, but you don't have the confidence in saying, well, this underdog's going to win because he's a better fighter, or the odds makers are just that much wrong on valuing who they're valuing and stuff. I do think they've overvalued some fighters, especially in the prelims. But with that said, I wouldn't like putting money on it. You still would side with where the smart money's going, and that's the favorites. So betting aside, when we're getting into the main card, first of all, this main card is stacked. This event is stacked, but this main card is going to be great. All 5 fights are interesting to watch. Sanchez versus Chiesa, they both are trying to get back into that division, get back up into contention. Sanchez, he's literally telling people he's coming to kill this guy. Okay, so this isn't going to be it's a stylistic battle. You got someone who just wants to strike in Sanchez, and Chiesa who wants to take it to the mat and submit his opponent he has like 11 submission victories, I think, if I remember correctly, out of like 15 wins. Like he's all about making someone tap out. And Sanchez is all about knocking somebody out. That stylistic matchup in itself right there is going to be exciting to watch. And then you go into Luke Rockhold coming back after Mr. Ralph Lauren himself coming back to fight for the first time since February 2018. And he's going up in weight class. Back in the day when I used to cover MMA on a regular basis for a different company, one of my first interviews I did was with Luke Rockhold. And we used to talk about, we were joking around how the Rockhold last name and the Rockwell last name converge many centuries down, in the past. So I have a little bias towards Luke Rockhold because he might be a distant cousin of mine. I like his fights. I think he's just an exciting fighter. He's a former champ. He's won in Bellator. He's won in UFC. I'm looking forward to see how he competes going up in weight at the light heavyweight now. I think he's going to win the fight. It should be a close fight, but I think he's going to win. And then you get into the Masvidal-Askren fight. I'm not a fan of Askren. I don't like Askren. His attitude, his personality just irked me. He should have lost his first fight in the UFC. He got lucky there. I think the ref did a bad job in that one. Masvidal, I don't use this term lightly, but Masvidal is like, he's gangster. Like, he's not someone to mess around with. If there weren't rules, he probably would kill a man inside the cage. That's the mentality he has. This man does not come to fight. He comes to destroy his opponents. You can see it the way he walks. You can hear it in the way he talks, and you can see it in his fighting. He's evolved since his days in Bellator and earlier UFC days. He has evolved as a fighter. He is a very dangerous striker. Once again, stylistic matchup. Askren's going to take it to the mat. Masvidal wants to knock his head off. Which one's going to get the better of that? Right now, you have to lean towards Askren because as long as he can take a punch, if he gets Masvidal to the mat, he's going to win it. If Masvidal can defend the takedown successfully and light them up on their feet, he could win the fight. I think the odds are a little bit overvalued towards Askren. I think that's one of those fights where odds makers are going by the name and the record, where Masvidal is a very, very dangerous guy inside the cage. In his last fight against Darren Till over in London, he knocked him out. And then during an interview backstage, decided to get in a fight with another guy, another UFC fighter. And it's just like, this guy is he's one of those wild You can see it in his eyes. Dude is wild. Dude is gangster. I don't say that about a lot of people, but Masvidal is one of them. I'm looking forward to that fight just as much as any other fight on the card. This is going to be a great UFC event. There's prelim fights that are definitely exciting as well. But when we're just looking at the main card, this is one of the better main cards that they've had. You know, this might be the best main card they've had all year. I'd have to go back and compare. There might be another one earlier in the year that can compare, but this is stacked. And you have, you know, multiple championship fights. You're talking about two fighters, though. And this is probably why this event will end up being the best main card of the year. You got two fighters fighting for legacies of being all-time greats. It's not just like fighting for a legacy to be one of the greats. We're talking about being the best all-time. Nunes is the best female fighter. Jones is the best male fighter. And both of them competing to be the best MMA fighter of all time. Like, when you bring that prestige and that kind of legacy into an event, it just takes the card to another level. Then you fill out the rest of the undercard of the main card with potential exciting fireworks. Askren and Masvidal have been saying terrible stuff about each other in the media. Their war of words has made this fight almost more must-see than any other fight on the card. That's how crazy this is. I'm pumped for it. We got the holiday weekend. We got my birthday weekend. We got a big UFC weekend. We've got a hot dog contest tomorrow. We got fireworks tomorrow. Like, this is the time of the year to be excited about it. UFC 239 is going to be a great card. I can't wait to watch it.
Can't wait for that. Happy birthday, America. Happy birthday to Rick. Rick Rockwell, thank you very much. Be sure to check out Rick's articles on boxing, MMA, and more online now at gamblingsites.org. And make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Odds On Favorites YouTube channel. I'm Drew Goldfarb. He's Rick Rockwell. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the 4th of July. We'll see you next time.